Joining me right now is former National Security Council Chief of Staff and Center for Security Policy incoming President Fred Fleitz. Fred, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning, Maria.
Your reaction to the president's trip, and compare the modern military today and how it's evolved over this 100 years.
Well, Maria, I think what's extraordinary about this trip and unfortunate is what President Macron said about nationalism, which I think was an implicit criticism of President Trump. Macron was criticizing extreme nationalism, not what President Trump has in mind with America First. President Trump is pushing an agenda that is really criticizing the consequences, the bad aspect of internationalism, such as trade deals that hurt the American worker, arms control deals that basically the U.S. abides by and no one else does, and international organizations that are anti-Israel and anti-America, like the UN Human Rights Commission, which President Trump withdrew from last spring because it was passing resolutions condemning Israel and the United States and not Venezuela and Cuba. I mean, when I look at what happened in France, I think this is really unfortunate. I think the president will be talking about that this week.
What about Saudi Arabia? The Wall Street Journal leading its coverage today, #1 story about billionaire Saudi Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, titled "Once Censored, Billionaire Saudi Prince Returns to the Spotlight." We know that he's come out and spoken to me in an exclusive interview about his imprisonment, and it basically suggests that he's back in good stead with the Crown Prince. Here's what Prince Al-Walid said to me in that exclusive just 1 week ago.
You know, that's exactly what I tell you when the media goes beyond its limits and commit all these lies, innuendos, and rumors. You know, I was watching all the programs on TV while I was in the so-called detention. When I heard that a team in the United States came to torture me, and my feet was up and my head was down, and I went to a high-security prison. All this were lies, not true, false statement completely. And I heard also the rumors that all my wealth was taken up. You know, my wealth is completely as it is intact. Just look at Saudi stock market tadawul, and you see I still own 95% of Kingdom Holding.
What do you think about that? Where does this go, Fred, in terms of the U.S.-Saudi relations?
Well, look, the American left and the news media would like us to cut relations with Saudi Arabia because of its human rights practices. We have many states that have imperfect human rights practices. We're going to encourage them to try to abide by modern concepts of freedom and human rights. But look, we have to deal with the Saudis. If we did what the Washington Post wants and cut off relations with Saudi Arabia, we would be handing the Middle East to Iran. So we have to find a way to work with the Saudis and say to them privately they have to clean up their act.
Yeah, and you know, in addition to what the Prince told me that you just heard, he also talked about all these investments that he has, you know, to sort of prove that his wealth is very much intact. He says he's got $200 million in a company called Careem, which is a competitor to Uber and Lyft, another $250 million in Snapchat. He told me he had $250 million in Rotana Kingdom, Spotify, that's a Spotify equivalent. Is it possible that he's able to keep all that wealth, even with the Crown Prince pressuring everybody else to pay the government because it was ill-gotten gains?
You know, it's hard to figure out what's going on in Saudi Arabia. There's obviously enormous corruption, and basically the Crown Prince realizes that Saudi Arabia, to have a future, has to develop an economy that is not completely centered on oil and the export of oil. And I think the Crown Prince is moving in a positive direction, but it's pretty clear that the huge amounts of wealth in this country among the Saudi family has been abused. There's been a lot of waste, and somehow this has to be taken care of.
So you think that the U.S. and the Saudis continue their very important partnership, given what's gone on in the region and Iran and its behavior. And so what did the U.S. do? Slap sanctions or something? The Magnitsky Act? What would you expect?
There may be some minor sanctions against Saudi officials, but look, we have to have a strong relationship with Saudi Arabia, because if we alienate the Saudis, if we damage them politically in the region, as I said, we hand the region to Iran. We simply can't do that.
Let's move on to China. Vice President Mike Pence in Asia this week, where he'll represent the president on military and trade issues. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy joined me yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures. He talked about the trade negotiations and where we are with China now. Listen to this.
I'm looking for the president who's going to sit down with President Xi in China, coming forward in the G20. I think that is very productive. If you look what's happening in China, as our market has continued to rise, as our economy has continued to get stronger, theirs has become weaker. And this is really by the leadership of President Trump. I am thankful that I think China will find it is in their best interest to sit down with America and find that they need to come to a fair and honest agreement, not one that we currently have. And I think the entire world will be successful because of that leadership.
Fred, do you think we're close to a U.S.-China trade deal? What is it going to take to get China to change its behavior in terms of stealing our IP and forcing the transfer of technology?
I think such an agreement is still a little ways away, but it's worth pointing out, why is China engaged in predatory trade practices? Why has it engaged in the theft of intellectual property? Because no one has stood up to the Chinese. And I think the Chinese are struggling to deal with a president who is holding them accountable. Now, the Chinese are going to drag their feet. They're not going to want to agree to anything significant. They're going to try to wait out this president. But President Trump isn't waiting. He continues to up the sanctions, up the tariffs on Iran until they just started negotiating in good faith. So I think the prospects are positive, but it's going to be an uphill battle.